They are the twin brothers of Arwen, warriors who would show great love for their family, not just for their sister and parents, but perhaps most notable is their dedication to their future brother-in-law. While small, their role in the War of the Ring would be important, from the battlefields of the south to a secret errand in the north. Today on Nerd of the Rings, we cover the complete travels of Elladan and Elrohir. The twin brothers Elladan and Elrohir are born in the year 130 of the Third Age. They are the firstborn sons of Elrond and Celebrían, the Lord and Lady of Rivendell. In truth, we know very little of the first 2,000 years of the twins' lives. However, as we look at the life of their parents and the realm they ruled, we may have clues to their earliest deeds. For when the kingdom of Angmar would rise in the north, Rivendell would prove pivotal in fighting the Witch King. Yet it would be the forces of Angmar who would attack first, laying siege to Rivendell in 1356. And for 53 years, the elves of Rivendell would hold out against the army of the Witch King. Finally, in 1409, the siege would be broken, and elves from Lothlorien would aid those of Rivendell in subduing Angmar for a time. While we can't say for certain whether Elladan and Elrohir took part in the defense of Rivendell, or in driving away the orcs and men of Angmar, it seems probable they would have been. By the onset of the siege, Elrond's sons would have been well over 1,200 years old, well beyond their childhood. Likewise, we cannot say for certain whether the twins would have followed Glorfindel in the final battle against Angmar in 1975. Here we are only told the great elf lord led a group of elves out of Rivendell. For Elladan and Elrohir, their first recorded deed would also be the most tragic event in their entire lives. In 2509 of the Third Age, when the twins are 2,379 years old, Celebrían goes on a journey south to visit her mother and father, Galadriel and Celeborn. However, as her company is taking the Redhorn Pass, the very same the Fellowship would attempt over 500 years later, she is attacked and captured by orcs. The twins would ride to their mother's aid, rescuing her from the dens of the orcs. Discovering that Celebrían had received a poisonous wound, they would take her back to Rivendell, where Elrond would heal his wife. While the wounds of her body would be healed, the wounds of her torment in both mind and spirit would not. Thus, the following year, Celebrían would sail west to the Undying Lands, leaving behind her husband, her twin sons, and her daughter, Arwen. We are told that Elladan and Elrohir would never forget the torture their mother had endured at the hands of the foul orcs. And over the coming centuries, they would often ride far from Rivendell with the Dunedain Rangers of the North, for orcs would multiply once more in the Misty Mountains and begin to ravage the nearby lands. It is during this very time, when the Dunedain and the Sons of Elrond were working to fight the orcs, that Bolroar Took would lead the hobbits in their famous victory over the foul creatures. One chieftain of the Dunedain that the brothers would befriend was Arathorn II, whose fateful end would come in the presence of the twins. For in 2933, they were hunting orcs who had come to Eriador, when Arathorn is killed, shot through the eye with an arrow. Arathorn's wife, Gilrain, would take their son to Rivendell, and so young Aragorn would come to be fostered by Elrond. Whether the twins or Aragorn would encounter Bilbo or the rest of Thorin's company in Rivendell during the quest of Erebor, we are never told. What we do know, however, is that Aragorn and the twins would grow very close, and well before Aragorn's 20th birthday, he would join the twins on journeys, where we find young Aragorn would achieve great deeds. It is after these adventures with Elladan and Elrohir that Aragorn would learn his true heritage and fall in love with Arwen. As the War of the Ring draws near, we find the twins would play a quiet yet important role in the early days of the conflict. For Elrond would send out many scouts in those days to find and pass along news. When Frodo and the hobbits come to Rivendell, the twins are not there. Their return would come right before the Council of Elrond, as revealed by Aragorn during a humorous exchange with Bilbo. "The Dunedain," said Bilbo. "He is often called that here, but I thought you knew enough Elvish at least to know Dunedain, man of the West, Númenorian. But this is not the time for lessons." He turned to Strider. "Where have you been, my friend? Why weren't you at the feast?" "The Lady Arwen was there." Strider looked down at Bilbo gravely. "I know," he said, "but often I must put mirth aside. Elladan and Elrohir have returned out of the wild unlooked for, and they had tidings that I wished to hear at once." At the council, the history of the One Ring would be told, and the attendees would debate what to do with the great weapon of the enemy. And in the end, Frodo would volunteer to take the One Ring to Mordor in an effort to destroy it, and it would be determined that Samwise Gamgee would accompany him. As Elrond takes time to consider who should make up the remainder of the Fellowship, he sends out many scouts, including his sons. And December was passing when the scouts began to return. Some had gone north beyond the springs of the Horwell into the Etten Moors, and others had gone west, and with the help of Aragorn and the Rangers, had searched the lands far down the Grey Flood, as far as Tharbad, where the Old North Road crossed the river by a ruined town. Many had gone east and south, and some of these had crossed the mountains and entered Mirkwood, while others had climbed the pass at the sources of the Gladden River, and had come down into Wilderland, and over the Gladden Fields, and so at length had reached the old home of Radagast at Roscobel. Radagast was not there, and they had returned over the high pass that was called the Redhorn Gate. The sons of Elrond, Elladan and Elrohir, were the last to return. They had made a great journey, passing down the Silverlode into a strange country, but of their errand they would not speak to any, save to Elrond. But what is this secret errand of Elladan and Elrohir? We are told of many of the deeds of Elrond's scouts who are checking out the possible travel routes for the eventual Fellowship. While this may, on its surface, seem to be a question that goes unanswered, there are clear clues as to what the twins were up to. We see these scouts venture to many possible spots the Fellowship may travel on both sides of the Misty Mountains. Yet there is one omission, the land of Elladan and Elrohir's grandparents, Lorien. And indeed, the mentioned Silverlode leads directly to this realm. Easily the most powerful nearby ally, it would become clear Lorien was a location the Fellowship wished to pass through. And indeed, Haldir would indicate they knew of Frodo's travels ahead of time. But we have heard rumors of your coming, for the messengers of Elrond passed by Lorien on their way home up the Dimril Stair. We had not heard of hobbits or halflings for many a long year, and did not know that any yet dwelt in Middle-earth. You do not look evil, and since you come with an elf of our kindred, we are willing to befriend you, as Elrond asked, though it is not our custom to lead strangers through our land. Here we see that Elrond directly asked that the elves of Lorien receive hobbits coming to their lands. Notably, Haldir is surprised at the presence of a dwarf in the company. This is due to the fact that at the time of Elladan and Elrohir's departure from Rivendell, only Frodo and Sam had been decided on as part of the group. Thus, the Fellowship would embark on their journey, and Elladan and Elrohir would remain in Rivendell, their deeds unknown for the following couple of months. However, a call to action would come to Rivendell from Galadriel. Aragorn is in need of his kindred. Let the Dunedain ride to him in Rohan. Thus Halbarad, one of the Rangers of the North, would assemble a company of 30 to aid their chieftain, and alongside him would ride the sons of Elrond, who wished to aid Aragorn. They would find the son of Arathorn on March 6, 3019, near Dol Baran. Here we see the twins described as appearing fair and gallant as elven lords, though this is no surprise as they are the sons of the great Elrond. With the Grey Company comes a gift from the twins' sister, a banner made by Arwen which shows the emblem of Elendil. But along with the banner, the twins bring counsel. As Elrohir says, "I bring word to you from my father. The days are short. If thou art in haste, remember the paths of the dead." "Always my days have seemed to me too short to achieve my desire," answered Aragorn. "But great indeed will be my haste ere I take that road." "That will soon be seen," said Elrohir. "But let us speak no more of these tidings upon the open road." The twins would accompany Aragorn on his journey, going first to the site of his previous victory at Helm's Deep, then riding with the Grey Company as they part from the Rohirrim. Coming to Dunharrow on March 7th, they would take the dreaded Paths of the Dead. Elladan would hold aloft 2 torches as Aragorn discovers the skeleton of a mighty man, Baldur, son of King Brego of Rohan, who had foolishly attempted the pass over 400 years earlier. Aragorn would yell out to the unseen dead men of Dunharrow, commanding them to meet at the Stone of Erech. "The dead are following," said Legolas. "I see shapes of men and of horses, and of pale banners like shreds of cloud, and spears like winter thickets on a misty night. The dead are following." "Yes, the dead ride behind. They have been summoned," said Elladan. The twins would bear witness to Aragorn's commanding of the Oathbreakers, and their driving away of the Corsairs from their ships at Pelargir. The Grey Company would then lead soldiers from the Gondorian fiefs to the fields of Pelennor, where they would save the Rohirrim from defeat. There came Legolas, and Gimli wielding his axe, and Halbarad with the standard, and Elladan and Elrohir with stars on their brow, and the dour-handed Dunedain, rangers of the north, leading a great valor of the folk of Lebanon and Lamadon, and the fiefs of the south. But before all went Aragorn, with the flame of the west, Andúril, like a new fire kindled, Narsil reforged as deadly as of old, and upon his brow was the star of Elendil. Thus, as between hammer and anvil, the armies of Sauron are crushed between the forces of Aragorn and Éomer. And in the coming days, Elladan and Elrohir would attend the council where Aragorn would decide to bait Sauron into battle at the Black Gate. Alongside the great heroes of the age, Elladan and Elrohir would fight a hopeless fight in the Battle of the Morannon. And yet, their ploy would prove decisive, giving Frodo the chance to reach Mount Doom, where the ring would be destroyed and Sauron defeated. The twins would return with the victorious heroes of Gondor to Minas Tirith, where Aragorn is crowned king on May 1st, 3019. 1 week later, they would leave the city, traveling north. On June 14th, they would meet on the road a company from Rivendell. Escorting their sister, they would stay in Edoras for 2 days, before leaving for Gondor, arriving in Minas Tirith on the first day of Lithe. Upon the very eve of midsummer, when the sky was blue as sapphire and white stars opened in the east, but the west was still golden, and the air was cool and fragrant, the riders came down the northway to the gates of Minas Tirith. First rode Elrohir and Elladan, with a banner of silver, and then came Glorfindel and Aristor, and all the household of Rivendell. And after them came the Lady Galadriel and Celeborn, Lord of Lothlorien, riding upon white steeds, and with them many fair folk of their land, gray-cloaked with white gems in their hair. And last came Master Elrond, mighty among elves and men, bearing the scepter of Illuminas. And beside him, upon a grey palfrey, rode Arwen, his daughter, Evenstar of her people. The following day, Aragorn and Arwen are married, and Gondor would have its queen. Like their father, in the books we see Elladan Elrohir as supportive of Aragorn, helping him to rise to kingship, and becoming their brother-in-law after years of being brothers in arms. But of the sons of Elrond in the Fourth Age, little is known. We know that they would return to Rivendell, and they would remain there after their father and grandmother had sailed with the Ringbearer to the Undying Lands. Joining them in Rivendell just a few years after their father's departure was their grandfather, Celeborn, who had grown weary of his realm without Galadriel. As for the ultimate fate of Elladan and Elrohir, we cannot be certain. Like their sister, they are among the half-elven, thus given the choice to be counted among elves or men. Likewise, they would have to make a choice, whether to stay in Middle-earth or to leave it. We know that on his deathbed in 120 of the Fourth Age, Aragorn mentions that none now walk in the Garden of Elrond. Yet we also know that Círdan and Celeborn had not yet sailed west at this time on the last ship, meaning Elladan and Elrohir could have remained in Middle-earth during these days of Aragorn's and Arwen's deaths. But would they remain in Middle-earth, a land of dwindling magic, no longer inhabited by their sister and brother-in-law? Or perhaps would the sons of Elrond indeed sail west with their grandfather, journeying to the Undying Lands to reunite with their father, and after carrying the memory of her torment for over 600 years, find their mother healed in the immortal lands of Valinor? As always, I want to say a huge thank you to all my Patreon and YouTube supporters who make this channel possible. CCDC Red Team, Evil Chameleon, Tom DeBombadil 19, Lissamy the Cinda, Rabbi Rob Thomas, Charles Leisure, Joe Tepper, The Mighty Mim, Andrew Carlisle, Swirled Traveler, Matthew Jeffrey, Viking Lord, Alvin Einbert, Jeremy Daniel Derby, Madame Director, Freya Firestar, Chris and Meg Q, Leo Vittori, Sky Carcass, Slide Belts, Dane Ragnarsson, Berto Berg, Graham Derricott, The Dark-Haired One, Wyland, Z and N, Evely, Kia, Micah Wu, and Debbie. If you enjoyed the artwork in this video, check out the artists in the description to purchase prints of their great work for yourself. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Nerd of the Rings.